In the last part, we saw that Chu Xiao was walking on the road. She had subconsciously walked a long distance now. A thick, tall elm tree, estimated to be about 30 to 40 years old in 3 years, stood by the side of the lake. Pieces of red cloth were strewn everywhere, together with colored paper. It was a superstition that the villagers held close to their hearts, as they believed that a deity resided in the elm tree. They believed that the thicker the tree, the higher probability that supernatural forces resided within it. Over time, villagers which had fallen on hard times would visit the tree to pray for peace, in the hope of finding light at the end of the tunnel. Chu Xiao stood under the tree as an unknown emotion surged from within her heart. She did not know what was on the tree. She looked up quietly and half squinted her eyes, fixating on the same spot for a long time. She did not know what had happened here 3 years ago when she was possessed by the Zhang family. One person had rode past this place. That day, the sunlight was bright. Yu and Yu stood desolate under the tree as they missed out on seeing each other by mere inches. Chu Xiao reached into her pocket and felt a jade pendant inside. As she held it in her hand, she went into a trance. This pendant was the one that she had picked from Yu and Yu when they fought at Tiang Cheng Shao's residence back in Weipeng City. Thereafter, she disguised herself as a dancer and was discovered by him. He demanded the jade pendant from her, but she was still spiteful back then. In a fit, she had said that she had dumped it into the lake, causing the servants in the Tiang Cheng Shuao's residence to dig up the lake to no avail. On the day that she left Yanbei, she did not bring anything else but this pendant along with her. As the time passed, the memories stuck by close to her heart, exemplified by the jade pendant. She looked up, feeling a sense of bitterness in her eyes. Chu Xiao closed her eyes and tossed the jade pendant upwards. In that split second, thousands of complex emotions played themselves out in her mind. The heavens had made a fool of them. They were not to be after all. As she turned to leave, a crisp sound echoed from the behind. The sound was smooth to the ear and pierced through her spine. Chu Xiao turned back in panic, only to see that two jade pendants had fallen from the tree, landing perfectly in each of her hands. The pendants were white and shiny. They were similar in design. They were actually an identical pair. Chu Xiao was completely stunned. In that split second, her mind reconstructed the figure of that certain man, with his sleeves fluttering in the wind. What kind of emotions must he have had to throw out the other half of the jade before turning back on his horse? She bought a rabbit-shaped lantern, and lifting that lantern, she stood on the road. She seemed like a lost child. In this night, everything seemed more lively than normal. Happiness seemed to be found in the every corner. Looking directly ahead, she walked in a straight line alone, carefully holding the lantern. It was as though she was worried that someone would knock into it and damage it. Carefully walking to the edge of the lake, she lifted the lantern up as the green water wet the corner of her skirt. Yet she was completely unbothered by that. She was thinking that you and you, it seems like in this life I will be indebted to you. If possible, let us meet again earlier in a better time and location. With her pale fingers pushing very slightly, the lantern floated into the distance. In the undisturbed lake water, the lantern was like a small boat, creating light ripples, and along with the wave, faded into the darkness of the night as it drifted over the surface of the lake that was filled with reflection of the festival lights. Suddenly, a small wave assaulted the small lantern. A small boat had passed by with its air, creating a tsunami for the small lantern. With the flickering of the lights, it was apparent that the light almost went out. It seemed to be sinking. For some reasons, the numb heart of Chu Xiao suddenly tensed up. She subconsciously stepped up, throwing as though oaring for the small light. It was just then a bigger lantern floated by. The string atop the lantern had gotten tangled with Chu Xiao's lantern. Spinning on the spot for one round, it so happened that it righted Chu Xiao's lantern as well, while blocking another wave coming from an every bigger ship. With Chu Xiao's small lantern, the two lanterns coiled around each other, floating up into the deeper end of the lake. They had the same design of a rabbit, one big, one small, and as they leaned on each other, it seemed particularly heartwarming. With the bigger lantern shielding the waves for the small lantern, the light stopped flickering and brightened up. The warmth of two lights shone onto the surrounding water. Chu Xiao heaved a sigh of relief. Even though she knew that the light would eventually still go out, it would always be better if it could last a bit longer. Loosening up her tightly knit brows, she casually lifted her eyes up. Yet, on the other end of the lake, a certain figure suddenly appeared. She felt as though she had been struck by lightning. As she stood rooted to the ground, completely dumbfounded, she seemed to have seen him again. In a white overcoat, he stood upright in the wind. His black hair covered part of his eyes, as his eyes seemed undisturbed like a frozen lake. Suddenly, a multitude of fireworks resounded behind them. The sparkling lights illuminated their crisscrossing gaze. Looking at him, Chu Xiao's gaze was something that he had never seen before. In fact, he barely knew how to describe that. Her gaze was like a child who had been abandoned, looking at her home in a dream, unable to divert her eyes away. Opening her mouth, she seemed as though she wanted to say something, yet no words came out. With her lips trembling, she had not even broken into a smile before two long streaks of tears flowed down on her face. She ran ever so hurriedly that the passers-by gave her weird stares. Yet she could not be bothered. When you looked on at her, with his gaze completely calm. Yet, when their eyes met again, one could see a sense of worry. Finally, they met again. Thanks for staying right beside me. Feel free to share, comment and subscribe. Don't forget to like the video. Thank you.